Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be taking an early look at December. Now you might be asking, well, didn't you just do that video yesterday, pretty much the same exact thing? This is going to be a little bit different. Yesterday we focused on the entire winter as a whole, giving you kind of a perspective as to why I'm thinking the way I am in terms of the winter forecast, which by the way, that winter forecast will be coming out on the 30th, the December forecast will be coming out on the 29th, and actually a sneak peek of the December forecast is already out on my community tab if you want to go check that out on YouTube. So you can go check that out there. But today we're just going to be focusing solely on December and what should be occurring in December and what we think will occur in December. So we're going to look at a couple actually different parameters than what we looked at in yesterday's video. We'll look at some of the same parameters because some of them are actually quite important. So we have a lot to look at in today's video. So let's get right into it. Let's start off with your current sea surface temperature anomalies in the entire globe. So this is the entire globe, and then plotted out are the temperature anomalies, and we see this big blue blob sticking out from the western side of South America. And we see some actually rather below normal values in those blues, the greens, and the purples. That's indicating a La Nina. And El Nino would be if you had very warm conditions all scattered throughout here, and a La Nina would be if you had fairly cold conditions scattered throughout here. And we're in a La Nina. Now, what a La Nina does is it really disactivates that southern jet stream. So the southern United States stays fairly dry and potentially warmer. And then what it does is it brings that jet stream up through the western United States and then down through, and then what usually brings it a little bit further west than the Appalachians. So sometimes the East Coast really doesn't have a good winter with that. I think it's going to be a little bit different this year. I think that jet will get all the way down to the coast and make it a pretty good winter for some of those areas along the East Coast as well. Now, here is something that I've been talking about quite a lot, and this is something that we really have to pay attention to. This is the 500 millibar heights. Now, this is not the 10 millibar heights that I've been talking about for the past few videos. We're going to talk about that later on in the video. This is the 500 millibar height. This is about 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere. So whatever's happening here usually translates down to the surface. Now, I don't think it's very important to look at these colors because the CFS model does have a very warm bias. So these oranges and reds would indicate warmer the normal temperatures up that high, and then eventually that'll translate down to the surface. What I really want you guys to look at these isobars. You kind of see a slight ridge in the western United States. You see a little bit of a perk here where that isobars kind of go a little bit higher, and then you see a little bit of a dip in the eastern United States where they dip a little bit further to the south. That's going to be important. Let's play this forward. Now, this is the 0 to 10 day, so this is going from today all the way until December 4th. Here's through December 14th, from the 4th to the 14th. What is also important is look at this. You have a little bit of a colder area for parts of the southeastern United States, and if you can break down this area, if you can get rid of that ridging right there, then you would have a polar flow straight down the east coast. Now, look at those isobars. They're even further dug into portions of the eastern United States now, and that jet stream would be dipping even further south, indicating colder conditions. Even though you see those warmer height anomalies, that would still indicate colder conditions for the eastern United States, just if you subtract that warm bias that is ingrained within the CFS model. Now, here to be from the 14th to the 24th, and we're looking at that ridging potentially continuing on the CFS model. Again, I'm not really too fond of what the CFS is doing. I don't think it's too accurate, but what you also want to pay attention to, look at this. You still have that ridging out west. You still have that troughing out east. Even if it's minor, this is an averaged out model, so that means that there's some agreement that at least there will be some sort of a trough through the eastern United States. That's something you haven't seen through much of November, October, and September. Now, if we just look at the final time period, this is from the 24th to the 3rd of January, and that trough is still in the east, ridge is still somewhat out in the west, and we're still dealing with that same pattern. Now, here's something else that we have to look at. This is about 90,000 to 105,000 feet up in the atmosphere. Now, this is your 10 millibar height anomalies from the GFS model. This is the American model, and this is showing you where you're seeing colder temperatures up in the atmosphere, where you're seeing warmer temperatures up in the atmosphere. But this is more importantly showing you where your polar vortex is at that point. Now, your polar vortex, again, a lot of people know it's usually up in the Arctic Circle, but look what you have here. You have actually some warming up through the eastern part of the Arctic Circle. You have some cold air through the western part of the Arctic Circle, which means that your polar vortex is not over here. Well, where's the polar vortex going to go? It's going to have to go somewhere. It's going to go further to the south. It's going to go through portions of Europe and then back around through portions of the United States. And that's what you're seeing there. So this takes usually about 7 days to translate down to the surface. So whatever you see here is probably going to happen on the surface right around, for example, this is what the height anomalies look like right now. This would probably occur on the surface right around December 1st or so. So that's just something that you have to keep in mind. This is not something that's going to instantly translate down to the surface. Now, you see, by this point, we have a trough in the western United States ridge in the east, but that is going to change. Look what happens as we get to the 27th. So this would be impacting the surface right around the 4th of December or so. We're dealing with mainly a trough in that central part of the United States, ridging somewhat on both sides of the United States. And then by this time, probably as we get to the 30th, the height anomalies are really going to shift further to the east. And if you continue this forward, the most important thing for me is seeing if there's a ridge out in the western United States and over the eastern Pacific, because if there's not, then there's no way that you're going to get cold air in any part of the United States. But when you have that ridging out in the western United States, a ridge is much more supportive and it's much more stable than a trough. So if a ridge is in place, that usually sticks around for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. So you have that ridge out near Hawaii, and what that's going to do is funnel that cold air from the Arctic Circle straight down into the eastern United States. And if we actually play this through, you're going to see this is the 6th, here's the 9th, here's the 10th, and this is the final frame of this model run. And you see, we actually get the polar vortex to shift even further south as we get to the end or to the middle part of December. So this is something that we have to keep our eye on, and this is something that's very important. Now, here's something else I want to show you just to demonstrate my point. This is what the surface map, or this is what the upper air map looks like on Thursday, the 3rd of December. So this is 216 hours out. Take a mental note of what this is, and then here are your actual temperature anomaly forecasts. Now, we see a little bit of warm air. That's mainly not associated with the overall pattern. That's warm air that's being dragged up by a low pressure that would be right here by this point, according to the GFS model. But you get the general point. Anywhere that's not being impacted with that low pressure system is fairly cold, and this would be December 10th. So I went 7 days out from that time period, and you're actually seeing by that point that cold air is starting to enter the east. Again, if there wasn't this system right here, the entire eastern United States would be cold. So that kind of demonstrates my point just a little bit. Now, here's something that I know a lot of you guys want to look at. This is the total snowfall for different time periods. Let's go 10 days out on the European ensemble model, a collection of 51 different models, and they average them out. And we see closer to 2 to anywhere in the grays actually is under an inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blue, 6 to 10 in the purple, 10 to about 30 in the pinks, and then as you get into those blues and the kind of darker blues and getting into those I would say purples almost, that's where you're 3 feet plus of snowfall. Now, we're looking at maybe, and this is actually probably going to be a better indicator of the chances of seeing snow. So, for example, once you get into that blue shade, I think you have a fairly decent chance of seeing snow. If you're in the gray shade, you have a chance, but it's really not that big of a chance. So this is going through December 3rd, and you have some decent chances for portions of the Central Plains up through the Great Lakes and the interior Northeast. Look at this as we get to the 8th of December, the 15-day snowfall outlook, and we're looking at, this is the 15-day snowfall outlook, and we're actually looking at that area getting spread a little bit further south, and now portions of the Northeast are getting involved with that, as well as more areas through the central United States. And then let's look 30 days out. So let's take a big jump. Notice what you see here. This is going through the 23rd of December, so we haven't even finished the last week of December by this point, and we're looking at a lot of snow. And when you're in those blues, again, I think that's a fairly good chance that you see snowfall in those regions. And we have a lot of those areas for much of the country in those blues. Purples, you have pretty much a guaranteed shot of seeing snow by that point. Here's the 45-day outlook, and This goes through January 7th, so we're into the first week of January. But look at that, we have a lot of areas getting 6+ inches of snowfall. So I know this is adding on an extra week onto this, but I took the snowfall totals on average for the month of December, and I'm just going to read them out here and compare that to what you see on this map. If you have a near average or even a above average December, that almost always translates to an above average winter. So just look at some of these numbers going from now until the first week of January and compare these to the December snowfall totals. Now let's just go through the list. Boston, you average 9 inches. Chicago, 8.5 inches. Both of those are seeing more snowfall than what they typically see according to this map. Cleveland, 14.1 inches. Detroit, 9.7. Kansas City, 4.4 inches. Milwaukee, 10.6. Nashville, half an inch. Minneapolis, 11.5 inches. New York City, 4.8 inches. Philly, 3.4 inches. Pittsburgh, 8.3 inches. DC, 2.3 inches. Rochester, New York, 21.8 inches. Raleigh, North Carolina, 0.8 inches. And St. Louis, 4.4 inches. What you might have noticed from all of those areas that I've cited, they're either very close to their average for snowfall, or they're actually above average for their snowfall if this were to be the correct map. And that's important because pretty much all of these circumstances, if you look back at 30 years back, and you take all the winters that had a below average December, they usually add up to a below average winter. If you have an above average winter, there's almost a guaranteed shot that you see an above average, or if you have an above average December, there's almost a very good shot that you see an above average winter as a whole. So December can be a very important month for this stuff, and the fact that we're seeing this much snowfall being outputted by most of these models is very, very interesting to me. And there's some individual models showing a lot more than this, but I just read off some statistics. So those are hard facts that if they were to be true, if this were to be a correct model output, we would be looking at most likely an above average winter for 2020 to 2021. Now let's start talking about something else, teleconnections, and this is going to be a little bit longer of a video, so I apologize for that. Now this is the NAO. Now when you have when you have a positive NAO, usually that brings warmer conditions for the east and vice versa. So you want a negative NAO, or at least a near average NAO for cold and snow in the east. Look what you have. You have currently an above average NAO, and this is the European model. And then look what happens. It dips down, and then it stays near average. If it's within a degree of average, then you really don't have too much effects from the NAO, and really it wouldn't lead to either a warm or a cold pattern on its own. Here's something else that we have to look at: the AO. This is also important. It's currently when it is in positive phase, that means the polar vortex is locked up in the Arctic Circle, and there's no real cold air anywhere else in the atmosphere. Look what you have. You currently have that above normal AO, but then it starts to go near normal. And again, if this is also near normal, that means that you're having frequent visits from the Arctic Circle, and it's bringing in some cold air from time to time at least. Now, this is maybe one of the more important oscillations. You cannot have this be negative if you want cold and snow in either the eastern or western United States. If this goes negative, the entire United States pretty much goes into a blowtorch mode. And if it's near average, again, it really doesn't have too much effect. So it looks like it might dip negative, but then it goes back positive, and then it stays near neutral for a lot of this time frame. This is going all the way through the 9th of December. And then here's the PNA, and this is the single most important one. If you have a negative PNA, you cannot have cold conditions in the east. If you have a positive PNA, you almost always have cold conditions in the east. And look what happens. We're currently in a negative state, but look at this. It goes skyrocketing up. And what you might have noticed is that there's not too much of a difference within these models as they go far out. You were seeing before that you had a difference where some were going anywhere from 2 above to 3 below, and now it's a really tight difference. And pretty much all the models have this going positive and staying positive and fairly positive. That would lead to a ridge out in the west. And here are the areas that all of these affect. So the EPO out in the eastern Pacific, the PNA over the western part of North America, the AO over the Arctic Circle, and the NAO is an area south and east of Greenland there. And this is what you would want if you want a colder pattern in the eastern United States. You want a positive PNA, positive EPO, negative AO, negative NAO. This is probably the coldest pattern that you could be in. And then If you want a cold western United States, you still want a positive EPO, but you want a negative PNA, a positive AO, and a positive NAO, and that's really the best thing if you want some cold in the western United States. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. If you did enjoy this type of video, let me know down below, and I'll probably make a couple more of these, because it does seem, from what I've just been seeing from the analytics of yesterday's video and also from the poll I made on my community tab, you guys really like these type of videos. So I'll definitely make more of these as we go through time, especially I'll probably do a couple midwinter one of these, so definitely stick around. Make sure you have notifications turned on, make sure you are subscribed, and if you turn on your notifications, just make sure you click all notifications so you don't just get a couple here and there, because I know some of you don't get notified for that, and that's why you have to click on all notifications. And also leave a like on the video, helps it get out to more people, and it helps more people find my channel. Now again, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Go check out my sneak peek of my December forecast, which is out on my community tab. The December forecast again is coming out on the 29th. Winter forecast, the final winter forecast, is coming out on the 30th of November. So make sure you are there, and again, make sure you are subscribed, turn on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.